Well, the Twitter world is arguing the merits of someone doxing private information of a very at-risk individual. There's other things afoot. 5 Antifa members are charged with domestic terrorism. Cops swoop in on Atlanta Autonomous Zone and find explosives after locals were ambushed and homes set alight. Hold on there a minute. There's actual enforcement happening right now? Well, that's surprising. But there's some developments. They were setting houses on fire. They say 5 members of Antifa are in custody on domestic terrorism charges after they were protesting outside of a planned $90 million police training center. The site of the planned center has been the focal point of protests for months by Antifa, who have referred to the site, which protesters have made an autonomous zone, as Cop City. Most of those who were arrested were holed up in tree houses where police later recovered explosives. You know, I just want to point out, everybody be all like, if Tim Pool says Civil War, drink. And okay, fair point. But like, come on. When a bunch of balaclava-clad, explosive-wielding terrorists have seized territory as an autonomous zone and set people's houses on fire and then get arrested on domestic terror charges, I'm like, at the very least, maybe I'm a little bit right. I'm not saying I know exactly how things will play out, and terrorists have existed for a long time. This could just be another blip in the radar, or it could be indicative of something more. And considering the summer of love and the violence that we've seen, people often forget that when winter comes, people go and hide. They go into planning. They go into, armament building. Then when summer comes, they go out into the streets and all hell breaks loose. They say prior to Tuesday's arrest, police detained several people at the site for crimes, including destruction of property and arson, along with carjacking and attacks on local and government officials. Okay, I'm just going to say it again. Okay, when a group of black-clad individuals with explosives are attacking government officials and setting buildings on fire, and you're only just now hearing about it, something amazing, huh? Among the photos documenting the protest is an image of a group of ski mask-clad protesters standing over a truck with the banner reading "No Forest, No Peace, Truck the Police," as well as a smaller sign that read "No Cop City." Okay. Those arrested have been named as, I don't need to, I gotta be honest, I know a lot of people might want me to read out their names or whatever. I just don't think it adds to the story, but the names are there if you want to read them. Just reading a list doesn't make sense. Earlier this week, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation said that protesters had begun attacking police and other emergency service workers at the scene with rocks and bottles. After officers cleared the area, they recovered bombs, flares, and gasoline. Multiple crimes occurred on Saturday when the local fire department was called to the scene to extinguish a dumpster fire. Richard Porter told WXIA that he was set upon by the group when he attempted to pick up some scrap metal from the area. Porter said that members of the group threw things at him, including a gas bomb. He fled, leaving his truck behind, which was burned out. Porter told the channel, "It seemed to me like they were going to burn the truck with me in it." They probably were. It's a good thing you got out, man. Sorry this happened to you in your truck. Look at these are extremist terrorists. They're lunatics. They're committing terror. They torched houses. I mean, look at this stuff. 2 houses under construction in the vicinity of the protest were burned out by protesters. These people are violent extremists. They need to be arrested. They have been, domestic terror charges. Okay. Viacel is the only member of the group. Only member of the group is from the area where the public safety center is being constructed. Authorities used tear gas and pepper balls to clear the protesters from the scene. On the day of the arrest, the Atlanta Community Press Collective wrote on Twitter, "Tree sitters report that they are surrounded and being tear gassed by police." While a representative from a group supporting the protest, the Atlanta Solidarity Fund, told AJC that those arrested were legitimate political prisoners. Considering what I've seen in law enforcement, I am not unsympathetic to the concerns over massive expansion of police departments. But I think the issue is cultural. This is not going to solve the cultural problems. It's going to make it worse. The police that you have a problem with need to know they are not welcome in certain communities. You are actually making people like the police more by doing this and emboldening them. The simple thing you do is when you get a cop who does something bad, you film it and then say, "Here's what we're going to do, officer. We're going to put a picture of your face in every store and we're going to go door to door and say, please do not allow this man to come into your restaurant. Let them know he's not welcome here." That gets everybody on your side. This, the opposite. They're going to say there's clear evidence to the contrary that the people they've been arresting and targeting and attacking have been engaged in nothing but peaceful civil disobedience, despite the fact that there are 2 burned down buildings, a flipped over truck with them standing on it. Oh, well, it just spontaneously combusted, I guess, and then rolled over from the heat. That's the only explanation. A representative from another group, the Community Movement Builder, told the newspaper, "I think there are forest defenders who will continue to defend the forest. That means civil disobedience. That means rallies, demonstrations. That means all the tactics that we can use." Oh, really? The group said that dozens of police officers and undercover cops descended on the scene. After the initial arrest, officers began coming through the woods to clear anybody and everybody, a local official told AJC. Now, I can certainly entertain the possibility of false flag attacks, right? Let's say this. You're trying to build a $90 million project. That's a lot of money. And if you're a construction, crew, company, you're like, this is a big contract for us. We got to get it done. But these hippies in the trees won't let us do it. So, hypothetically, someone could hire some guy to go undercover, set fires, and then they could blame it on them, which would justify the police coming and removing all of them. Now, as much as I can say something like that, I want to point out there is a picture of these balaclava-wearing individuals standing on a truck they flipped over and set on fire. So, yeah, sorry, I'm not going to buy any false flag narrative. These people do these things. They've done it before. They'll do it again. Convictions of domestic terror carry with it sentences anywhere between 5 and 35 years in prison. The group is being held at DeKalb County Jail. DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston said in a statement, "I strongly believe in the right to peacefully protest for what one believes is right and just. However, I draw the line at violence, destruction of property, and threatening and causing harm to others." Agreed. If all these individuals did was chain themselves to some trees, I would be rooting for them. Nonviolent civil disobedience is a way you do it. And in the end, what may end up happening is they come up with big bolt cutters, snap the chains, carry the people away, and say, "Go home." You get brought into the station. You get a slap on the wrist charge. You made your point. You jammed people up. You caused friction. And you've got a lot of attention for your cause. I think nonviolent civil disobedience, like shunning cops, here's what you do. You take pictures of the people who are doing the work, and you say, we are going to go around and we are going to tell people not to support you. Now, I'm not a big fan of cancel culture, but cancel culture is different from this. I'll explain. Cancel culture, at least in the way I'm trying to describe it, is when like a race car driver's dad in the 80s said a slur, so he loses his sponsor today. Like, dude didn't do anything wrong, okay? When someone falsely accuses you or takes something you said out of context or digs up your past and then tries taking your job from you. If you're actively doing something that people genuinely disagree with and you get filmed doing it, well, then, it is what it is. I'm not saying it's ultimately always a good thing. Morality is not digital, it is analog. I'm just saying it's better than them going out and burning down people's houses. That's a lot worse. So if the alternative is we get some, public call outs, which can be frustrating, annoying, but that's all we ever see. We don't see violence or anything like that. I will accept it over whatever it is they're doing. Here we go. There's more. In a tweet, Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp said, "We will not rest when it comes to bringing domestic terrorists to justice." And these arrests should serve as a strong reminder to that. Here. In addition to the domestic terrorism charges, the group are accused of criminal trespass, interference with government property, and aggravated assault. Francis Carroll is facing the most charges in the case. He's a resident of the affluent Maine town of Kennebunkport. Kennebunkport, what a name. Where famously, George H.W. Bush spent his summers following his presidency. Oh, how nice. Hertel is a graduate of Pitzer College, where she majored in environmental analysis and math in 2020. An online bio describes her interests as public health and environmental justice, with a focus on prisons and water. Opponents of the training center have been protesting for months by building platforms in surrounding trees and camping out at the site. They say that the $90 million project, which would be built by the Atlanta Police Foundation, involves cutting down so many trees that it would be environmentally damaging. They also oppose investing so much money in what they call Cop City, which they say will be used to practice urban warfare. At this point, considering where we're going, again, I am not unsympathetic to that cause. But guys, you can just chain yourself to the trees. That's way more effective in every capacity than setting fire to people's property. The 85-acre property is owned by the city of Atlanta, but is located just outside the city limits in unincorporated DeKalb County and includes a former state prison farm. Just as an attempt was made to remove barricades blocking entrances to the site, firefighters and police officers were attacked with rocks and incendiary weapons, Boston said. Once the area was cleared, police found explosive devices, gasoline, and road flares, the GBI said. In an email to news outlets, opponents of the training facility said that police used extreme and unjustified measures against them, including tear gas canisters and pepper bullets. Yo, that is like the lowest possible tier of crowd control. Okay, calm down. They could be using bean bags. Those things hurt. Or, rubber bullets. Tear gas and pepper bullets? Come on. I once got ricocheted into the face with a pepper ball by some jerk cop. It was during Baltimore. I'm clearly filming and outside of the riot area, standing behind a big planter, like a big, stone thing holding plants. And the cop shoots the pepper ball right at me, and it shatters on the planter and sprays me in the face with plastic bits. Got plastic bits in my eyes. And I'm like, bro, I'm not with the riot. I wasn't anywhere near the rioters. I've got a press badge on. I've got, the phone in my hand. And I was like, the cop's to my right. I'm to his left. The protest is right in front of us. And he just turns and shoots at me. Okay? These people are dicks. That I get. But don't come to me and tell me just because sometimes cops are dicks and there are problems here, that don't come to me and tell me to defend a bunch of crackpot psychopaths who go around firebombing buildings and things like that. They're going to say the training center would include a shooting range, classrooms, a mock village, an emergency vehicle driving course, stables for police horses, and a burn building for firefighters to practice putting out fires. The vote came after weeks of protest from people who oppose the complex. My friends, I think we really are headed towards, escalation because cultural cohesion is gone. Everything is just sort of breaking apart. That's the way it is. Daily Mail reports. Comply or it's going to be a serious backlash. Activists demanding $800,000 for every black resident issues warning to California's reparations task force. Okay, it's just not serious at this point. California was never a slave state. California, my understanding, was being the westernmost state and being, I believe it was staunchly a free state. Why would California pay reparations? It's just so dumb. Look, if they go to the federal government and say the federal government owes money, we can have an argument about reparations. Fine. I think it's a losing argument. The argument I'd make is that reparations were paid in blood by the North to stop this, to stop slavery. More blood than I think, any other war in U.S. history, to be honest. One of the bloodiest wars in history, period. So you get, I think it's like 1 million plus dead. So yeah, a lot was sacrificed to keep the Union together, in part to stop the expansion of slavery. I mean, that was a big component of it. I know it's more complicated than that. But this war, right, it ends. And now you have people coming out saying, don't know, don't care. We should be given $800,000 each. Where's that money going to come from? Who's going to pay it? The Asian migrants who live in California who just moved there, they're going to put tax dollars into paying you reparations? They say stuff like, this country was built by slavery. Some of it was, maybe in the Old South and to a greater extent in the Northeast. But in Central and Western United States, that's not the case. And most of all of the development was not built by slave labor. So, it's like exponential. If we have 100 units of construction, in the founding of this country, 7 of those units were constructed. And then the population expanded. We're not going to punish 93% of people for what, 7 people contributed to. But I'll put it this way. The reason I highlight this in reference to the other story is that threats are starting to be made. Give us the money or it'll get worse. This is the breakdown of social cohesion. We're seeing Joe Biden talk about it, saying the original sin of my nation. I love that one. The original sin of this nation is not slavery. No, it was the wiping out of Native Americans because that happened first. Isn't that funny how they do that? Because they're pandering. Now, look, I view this country as conquered land. Conquered land is the way the world works. The way the world, unfortunately still works, but I got no problem saying we will evolve beyond all of that. That we will decide, you know what? We're not going to conquer anymore. We're going to work together and put that bloody past behind us. But I'm not going to be so naive as to look back 100, 200, 300 years and be like, I can't believe this land was conquered. It is what it is. From the bad, we have emerged with good. But you want to come to me and tell me that the original sin of this country is slavery. Meanwhile, the killing of Native Americans happened well before slavery came to the United States. Don't forget, what did they say? 1619? Was that the project? 1619 project? When the first slave was brought on the North Atlantic slave trade to the United States? Was it the North Atlantic slave trade? So you mean to tell me that for the 100 years before that, as European settlers came to North America, and were pushing out Native Americans and taking over land, that wasn't the original sin? Come on. But I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. I'm going to say this. We all got bad history. And there are things we can do to alleviate suffering in the present. For people who are in poverty because of systemic, or I should say historical racism, a lack of ability and upward mobility, you know what we do? We do some kind of program for people based on class, not race. We don't want to create racial tensions. And we do to a great degree. This is the point, though. We're seeing more stories like this. We're seeing ignorant rage, selfishness, illogical demands that can't even be met. 800,000 per resident? That's insane. You can't, it's not possible. And that's what they're pushing for. Now, what happens when you get a group of people who are told that they're deserving of, that they're entitled to, and they don't get what they demand? Okay, here we go. Also speaking on Thursday was Rev. Tony Pierce of the Black Wall Street Project, who shouted, $230,000 is not enough. They will never be satisfied. And why should they be? Anyone fighting for the survival of their tribe will demand whatever they can demand. And if they can't demand it, they will take it. That has been the history of this planet. So right now, when I see people go to a city that was never a slave state, in a state that was never a slave state, and say, give us $800,000 or it gets bad, that's no different. That's conquest. That is a group of people saying, you must give to us or else. Now you understand war, don't you? Let's go back hundreds of years. Let's go back to two groups of people. And one group goes to the other group and says, you better give us money or else because we deserve it. And they'll say, 100 years ago, my father was here and you stole his land. So we're going to take your land. And it just goes back and forth forever. Never ending. To this day. Now, what do we get from this? Social destabilization. I don't think these guys are going to grab guns and go shoot anybody up or anything like that. But they're going to advocate for, they're going to demand, they're going to build their tribe, and then eventually you will start to see urban conflict and urban collapse. Unless what? You give in and give them what they want? Just like the 5 Antifa members who set fire to buildings and trucks were engaged in acts of terrorism. This is where things eventually go when people say, I demand, I am entitled, or else. Social cohesion is what gets us out of this. When everyone agrees on the direction of the country, when everyone agrees on cultural norms and morals. But thanks to the internet, that doesn't exist anymore. You now have people who live in completely different universes, and you can never convince them otherwise. Their brains are out of sync. It was easy to keep everybody in sync with radio and television and the newspaper. But now we have the internet. The good news is we're able to push back on the authoritarian machine. The bad news is the authoritarian machine is able to recruit psychotic individuals to work at their behest. And so are other rogue factions. Which brings us to this. Extremists who steal a man's truck, set it on fire. What is that? What does this say? Let me see if I can. Oh, it's even smaller now. It says something like people the forest or what? Protect the forest or preserve the forest? Is that what it says? What does it say? I can't. It looks like pretend. I can't even tell what it says. Something like that. No forest, no peace, truck the police. Yo, that was some random dude's truck. Why did you destroy it? They don't know. They don't care. You are another. You're all others. And that's where this leads to. The othering. California, not a slave state, I mentioned several times. So who are these guys to come out there and say, give us money or else? They're not making any sound argument for recompense. They're just coming and saying, because we can, we are demanding you give us money. Okay, well, I imagine the city will cave and say, fine, and just give in. And that's called conquest. The money they receive is conquest. So, if a group of people are able to take something, is that the argument to be made? So long as we all agree that someone is more powerful and they can have it, they can have it. When two people demand something, refuse to back down, you get a fight. When two people demand something and one person backs down, you get acquiescence. The state will likely acquiesce to these guys just because it's the politics. But then what? Anyone can do it? Then the people who live there will start leaving, the revenue will start dropping, and it will begin to fall apart worse than it already is. That's where I feel we're going. But I don't want to make it seem like it's the apocalypse and everything's worse than it's ever been. I'm just saying these are a few scenarios that we can see happening. And I'll point out Antifa getting arrested for domestic terror charges. That is a step in the right direction. I'm not a fan of the security state. I'm not a fan of big police cities. But you know what's worse? These people, these Antifa guys, they're actually giving the police justification for their expansion. Nah, we don't need any of that. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.